Hello and welcome back. It's time for another edition of the Other Tom Green Show, which I consider, like many great upsets in sports, the fact that we're making another one. We did one, and here we are again. How about that? Before I became a broadcaster, which was a career I always sought as a young man, I always wanted to be a sportscaster. Like many young men, I held many different jobs. I worked in a supermarket. I did some landscaping work, all those other things, just trying to earn a buck. But maybe the most unique job I had was I worked as a projectionist. I was showing movies at a yacht club in eastern Long Island. So people who would come in on their yachts or boats or whatever would have something to do in the evening. They decided they would show movies. And I knew how to handle films, so I would put together the movie, which was like a major motion picture from a year ago or something. And one of the movies I remember most, because as a projectionist, you see every movie 6, 8, 10 times over and over again, so you notice small details. There was a movie called The Odessa File from the early 70s. It was made from a Frederick Forsyth novel, and it begins with the actor Jon Voight driving through a rainy night in Hamburg, and they set the time for you very clearly at the start of the film, because he's listening to the radio, and it is the day that John F. Kennedy was assassinated. And he's listening to reports of the assassination. And he's driving home on this rainy night, and he's a magazine writer, a journalist. And outside, all of a sudden, he misses a light by a few seconds. And then he looks over outside the side of his window, and he sees police taking a body out of a building. The entire story about hunting Nazis in the early 1960s in Germany and around the world spins from the fact that he didn't make that light, which you don't notice if you see the film. But if you see the film 6, 8, 10 times in a row, you realize there is a slice of fate or a lesson in timing and how life often bumps you into the wrong place or the right place. And subtle little things can change where you are and how your life goes. When you met your spouse, all those collisions. You see it in other films, like the movie Becoming Led Zeppelin. How in the world did these guys get together? It's just chance. So many things happen by chance. And then there's the question of what happens when the chance finds you. And today's guest is a great example of what happens when chance finds you and you handle it brilliantly. We're going to be talking with the great Verne Lundquist today on The Other Tom Green Show. So here he is, live and in person, the great Verne Lundquist, who not only is a great broadcaster, but for me personally has become a great friend. It's great to have you here. Thanks for taking the time.
Well, Tom, I'm honored that you would ask me to be here for number 2.
Yeah.
And congratulations that you sustained this new career.
This has been so long. My podcasting career is
Yeah.
a brilliant one. So people, I've learned, when you step away from the microphone or when you stop being in front of the camera, people wonder how you're doing, what you're doing, because you were part of our Saturday afternoons in the SEC, part of our Aprils in Augusta, so much a big part of so many people's lives. And those days now are behind you, but you're still active and you're still doing a lot of work and still enjoying your life. Tell
Yeah.
people what you're up to.
Well, my last event was the Masters in '84, in 2024. I'm sorry.
Right.
My age, you tend to forget years.
There are a lot of them.
Yeah, they cease to be significant. But Nancy and I are doing a lot of traveling. We live 70% of the year in Steamboat Springs.
Yeah.
We moved there in 1984 from Dallas, and we fill our days with a variety of different interests. We both read a lot. We do, and we have. Thank heavens we got the funds with which to travel, so we do that. Nancy particularly is a reader, more so than I am. I tend to have that thing made by Apple in front of me all the time.
Just scanning
yeah,
and skimming.
Exactly.
I was always amazed how, Steamboat Springs didn't seem like a natural choice for a man ascending through this network sports ladder, and you made a bold choice, but obviously one you've loved.
Well, I did. My background with Steamboat goes back to 1971. I was working in Dallas at the ABC affiliate, and I got a call from the senior marketing exec with Brand F Airlines.
Oh, yeah.
If any, you got to be of a certain age to remember Braniff. The acronym stood for Barely Running Along, Never in Full Flight. But this fellow named Cal Beaver called me and he said, have you ever done anything on skiing? And I said, why would I? I'm in Dallas. He said, well, there are 2,500 members of the Dallas Ski Club. And so he invited me at Braniff's expense to fly into Denver, Stapleton. And I was picked up by a fellow we lost, but he became a dear friend, the late Mix Beauvais. He was senior marketing executive of Steamboat. Picked me up at Stapleton in a white Lincoln. We made a pit stop at Apple Jacks, and this was before the Eisenhower Tunnel.
Oh, really?
So we went over Berthoud Pass,
Okay,
and came in through Granby, and I immediately fell in love with Steamboat. Just a small town, and then I was invited back by LTV. I got to be really good friends with the chairman, the late Paul Thayer, and he said, we're doing a golf tournament in Steamboat in May of '75, June, I guess. We'd like you to come up here. And so I came to play in the golf tournament, and that's when I met my idol, the late Doak Walker.
Well, he was your idol from your youth.
A long time ago, yeah, from my youth. But and I'm sure we'll get into that relationship with Doak, but just to give it, and it was called the Thayer Cashua at the time.
Hank Cashua.
Hank Cashua, World Pro Ski Champion,
Sure.
and a wonderful guy who lives now in at Yellowstone.
Okay.
I mean the big ski area in Montana.
Up there, okay.
Yeah. And anyway, I remember I was playing in a group, and the Thayer Cashua ceased to exist, and then I was asked by Rod Hanna, who's still a dear friend,
Sure.
If I would join Doak in taking over this golf tournament, which we did in 1984. Well, here's an idea of Doak's pull. He was 1A, I was 1B, and we're on the first tee at Rolling Stone, still
beautiful
where
course.
we play the golf tournament now. And Doak's foursome consisted of Don Meredith, Frank Gifford, Bobby Lane, who had been Doak's high school teammate at Highland Park. I was in the second group, 1B, and I had Moose Barrows, the original downhill of
Great
agony
racer.
of defeat.
Yeah.
But I followed them because we were always waiting for them. They were slow, in part because Bobby Lane, I saw this, he consumed 2 Mason quart jars of screwdrivers.
He was legendary for
And
many
he-
reasons, and that was one
Yeah,
of them.
that was one.
Yeah.
And he could still see the golf ball, which I found extraordinary.
He's a great athlete.
Yeah, yeah, he was.
The idea of your broadcasting career, because I alluded to it with how fate finds you, and I think as I've read your story and talked with you over the years, you and I were the same. We caught the bug as kids, and we wanted to do it. We wanted to be on the air. How you go about doing it, there's a lot of things that happen for you and to you and by you, but for you, the doors didn't all open quickly. They're like, it was like any career getting started. It seems like, where you had failures and you had successes, and some of them were,
It's one
who
of
knew?
these, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I always note, having mentioned in the open about the Kennedy assassination, you were working at a radio station when it all happened.
I was in Austin. It was my first full year as a sports director at KTBC, Austin, Texas Broadcasting Corporation,
Right.
owned by President and Mrs. Johnson. It was really Ladybird's money that allowed them to purchase the station. And the day of the assassination, I was working the noon news block. I did a disc jockey show,
Right.
5 to 9 every on AM radio, but they also required us to work the noon news block, and so I was running the board, is what they call it. And I was on the phone with Nita Louise Kellum, a high school classmate of mine, who was calling to tell me her father, J.C. Kellum, who ran the station for LBJ, was going to give me the night off so that I could be her escort. We weren't dating,
Right.
but I could be her escort to go hear President Kennedy speak. And at 12:25, we were running a taped agriculture report, and I'm on the phone with Nita Louise, and a newsman named Hal Nelson broke in and said,
Came into the room.
yeah, he came in and he said, put me on the air immediately. The president been shot. And so we stayed with Hal, and then we had a monitor, and we went to Walter Cronkite and heard those infamous words at 1:37, whatever it was, President Kennedy died. And that night, we all pitched in, what could we do?
Yeah.
And my role was that we had a station wagon that we called Red Rover,
Okay.
Pontiac station wagon. And CBS flew a correspondent in from Washington named David Shoemaker, and I drove him and his cameraman, and we went to Johnson City, which is Johnson's hometown, about a 60-mile drive. And the intent of that, the purpose of that visit, was to get in touch with everybody and anybody who had known LBJ growing up.
Now the president.
Yes.
Suddenly,
Yes.
the president.
Yeah. And then about 4 o'clock in the morning, and this is film, right? Not videotape. And so I drove David Shoemaker back to the old Austin airport, and he waited for a flight to go to New York City, and they processed the film. It seems ancient.
No,
it?
that's how it had to happen.
Yeah. And then they used that as filler, because Cronkite, I think, was on the air uninterrupted.
Everybody was on the air uninterrupted for
Yeah.
days after that. I was very young, but I do remember the impact, feeling it as a young boy.
Well,
for me at
Tom,
the time.
I think for my parents' generation, Pearl Harbor was a defining moment. For my generation, it was Kennedy. Just like for a younger generation, it was 9/11.
And here we are on 9/11 today,
exactly.
as we record this. So let's get to sports. It's so much lighter, so much more fun, and when I talked about those coincidences and how life suddenly thrusts you into a position, you've had so many legendary calls, and you were the person who was put in the chair in front of what were great sports moments enhanced by your call. Because I think of, there are these great moments that are indelible in your mind. Al Michaels at the Olympic Games, or the Kirk Gibson home run that hit in the World Series, and somebody's got to call it, and not everyone gets it right all the time. But you, several of these events were in the chair at the moment. So let's start with the one I think most people remember most. Let's take a look at the 17th hole at Augusta in 1986.
Maybe. Yes, sir!
Verne, it's 3 words. It's 3 words. And I think, Augusta is good for that, low-key approach to many things. But it took 3 words to become indelible.
There's a backstory, Tom. As there always in.
Yeah, of course.
And I'd love to share it. Our producer then was Frank Chirkinian. Frank was legendary.
Sure.
He did golf and tennis. Armenian American, about 5'7", tuft, curly gray hair, and always dressed in an Armani sport jacket, crease slacks, Gucci loafers with no socks.
Toughest guy.
Oh,
not
we
mean,
call
but
him
hard.
the Ayatollah, and partly out of respect, but mostly out of fear, and the single most profane human being I have ever met. So Frank is in the middle of the way a production truck is set up. Producer's here, director in the middle, and the technical director to the right. And the associate producer on the broadcast was a fellow named Lance Barrow, who is a man of large girth, and his nickname was Buddha.
Okay.
So on that Sunday, Jack had started the round 4 strokes back of Seve Ballesteros, and he had a really mundane first 8 holes. But he gets to 9, and he's still back by 4, and he birdies the 9th. And Buddha, Lance Barrow, gets into the headset. He's on the second row, and he says, "Frank, we've got Jack Nicklaus with the birdie at the 9th." And Frank, the Ayatollah, turned around and said, Buddha, we're storytellers here, and Jack Nicklaus is not part of this story. Now leave me alone. So Jack birdies 10. Frank, we've got Jack with a birdie on 10. And Frank just stood up, turned around, and just glared at him. He birdies 11. Frank, we've got Jack with his third birdie in a row. And Frank just looked at him and said, all right. So we rolled all 3 birdies in succession.
On tape, yeah.
Yeah. And I promise you, from that moment on, Jack didn't take a step on the second 9 that was not documented on CBS. So as it turns out, I can almost remember hole by hole he went along. The classic was on 16. And to give you some idea, he was using a 5-iron.
Oh, compared to now.
Compared to now,
Yeah.
they'd hit 9.
9 or a wedge, yeah.
And this young kid, 26-year-old kid named Jim Nance, is working 16, right? And legendarily, Jack hit the tee shot and never looked up, and his son, Jack the second, was on the bag. He said, be good, and Jack never looked up. He said, it is. And he almost aced it. And he rolls over to the side of the hole, maybe 3 feet. And Jim had a great line. He said, the bear has come out of hibernation.
Yeah.
So now Jack's at 17, and Seve puts it in the water at the par 5 15, double bogeys. So Jack has the lead. And I remember this vividly. He pulls his tee shot to the left, hits a 9-iron, 125 yards. He's got a slightly double breaking downhill putt. And I thought to myself, keep it simple and get out of the way. And
which not everyone would do in an ego-driven television life. Sometimes it's about you.
Yes.
And it isn't.
Well, some fellas, nameless on this program, seem to think that America's waiting for their verbiage.
Yes.
And just shut up. What do you do on Sundays now? Well, I stare at the television set during golf, and I tell the announcers, just be quiet. Just lay out, will you please?
Let me watch.
Yeah.
So let's go up 20 years now,
Sure.
because it's now you go from the greatest golfer in the world to the young man who'd become the greatest golfer in the world, and it's Tiger, and it's that shot on 16 that clearly you and Lanny were sorting out as an impossible shot, and making 3 or 4 was what he needed to do. So let's listen to Verne's call from 2005.
Here it comes. Oh, my goodness. Have you seen anything like that?
Those are the words, in your life. I mean, and it's just that seemed like it just came from the center of your soul, like that just came out.
I think, Tom, that I was reacting as most of America was. You know, I had certainly never seen anything like that in my life. And I felt like, and ours should be a reactive craft. You can't plan something and force it in. Unfortunately, there are guys who have done that. But I was reacting as it happened.
Yeah.
And there's a wonderful backstory to how we got this on the air.
Well, and that the way that was televised, like Jack's shot, that right down the barrel camera of Jack making that putt was part of that concept, or how it constructed for a viewer. This one as well. I mean, it's an amazing visual presentation, and your words just seem to ascend. But you said it almost didn't happen.
It is quite true. Now Buddha is a producer, right? Lance Barrow has taken over for Frank, and he's sitting in the left-hand producer's chair, and the director is a fellow named Steve Milton, who still does all of our golf and all of our college football on CBS. Steve is a wonderfully gifted producer. So, and I was in the tower at 16, and my cameraman was a fellow named Bob Wishney, just a big old lout from Philly, working man's guy.
Yeah.
And he was camera 10, okay? And so Steve, when I had asked Lanny, Tiger was playing with Chris DeMarco.
Yeah.
And DeMarco's hit his tee shot 20 feet below the hole, and Lanny Watkins was our analyst at the time. And I said, Lanny, what about this shot? And he said, Tiger will be lucky to keep it inside DeMarco's ball.
Yeah.
And so, with that in mind, and the front of the truck now was Buddha, Steve Milton in the middle, and Norm Patterson, the technical director.
He's the one who actually pushes the button.
And so when Steve says, take camera 10, which is the camera in the tower with me, Bob Wishney, Norm Patterson punched it up, and camera 10 appeared in living rooms across
And that's
the
the one we watched.
Yes, that's what you saw. And as the ball got down, an inch and a half, Steve Milton said, as he should have, take camera 6. Well, camera 6 was on a platform over here. His name was Skip Shackelford, and his responsibility was take a tight shot, a reaction shot of Tiger.
Tiger, yeah.
And Norm Patterson put his career on the line and did not obey the direct command of a director. He followed his instinct.
He did not take 6.
He did not take 6. And because he did not take 6, you saw what you saw. Had he taken 6, it changes everything about our memory of the shot, because you would have heard the roar, but you would have seen Tiger reacting to it. You would not have seen the ball drop. And Norm, I mean, it's like being on the bridge of a ship, and the captain says, hard ride rudder, and you go left. I mean, it's fireable. But he knew what he was doing, and instinctively he stayed. And so that's why we all got to see what we got to see.
And Nike made millions and millions. That ball sitting there, that super close-up of that big Nike swoosh as it tumbled into the hole with their guy, Tiger, that was big dough.
1.8 seconds.
That it hung.
It hung. And Advertising Age magazine, which is the trade journal, estimated in $2,005. Gosh, 20 years ago. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
That accrued value of the exposure was worth $19 million to Nike. So, and Tiger, Tom, you and I have chatted about this. Tiger will tell you that's not the greatest shot he ever hit. He was playing in the Canadian Open, and he was in a fairway bunker, and he hit a 6-iron, 210 yards across a lake, a pond, and it came to stop 12 feet from the hole.
It was a tremendous shot.
Yeah, that's the one he will tell you that was the best.
Your interaction with Tiger, who is not necessarily known for being a warm guy, that led to a famous photograph on your final day at Augusta working with CBS, and it's such a funny picture because Tiger, who is so legendarily focused, not noticing anything around him, did take a minute, and he came over and shook your hand and thanked you for your work for the years. But the photo is this photo is so great. That is the right hand of Verne Lundquist, whereas Tiger's not a tree lover, but he loves Verne, and that was very nice of him.
Yeah, it really was. I've known Tiger's agent, Mark Steinberg, for a number of years, and he's been Tiger's guy for in excess of 30 years. And so Tiger had on his Tuesday press conference, and knowing that it was my last year, he was asked about me and my relationship to Tiger and that shot, and Tiger was very gracious. He said, because of what I did and what he said, we're going to be joined at the hip together, which is a very nice thing to hear. And so I told Mark I really wanted to thank him, and he said, well, and he had made the cut, right? And Mark said, when he's playing 15, get out to 16. Well, I've had back issues, so they wouldn't allow me to climb the main tower behind 16. So, but I was determined, knowing my last year, that Saturday and Sunday I was going to be in a tower. I wasn't going to be in the content center,
Right.
calling it off a monitor, which I'd done for 4 years. And so they arranged for me to go to that flanker tower by the bunker to the right of 16. And so Tiger was playing with an amateur, a wonderful young guy named Neil Shipley. And so I got down when he was on 16, and he came by, and I just said, "Tiger," and he leaned over and shook my hand. And there are two versions of that handshake.
There's one where we see you.
Yeah, it's, but the other was from across the green, and Tiger went on Jimmy Fallon's show on Monday night. He was peddling a new brand of clothing.
Right.
And all Fallon wanted to talk about was, "Tiger, you and the tree." So, yeah.
Your schedule, when you had ascended at CBS Sports to, where you could, make your schedule, was based, I imagine, on April in Augusta and Saturdays in the South during the fall, because the SEC then became every bit as big, and a crowd, a fan base, meaning all the SEC schools, they got to know Verne, and they liked the many called Uncle Verne, but those broadcasts, because you knew the South and the nation were often watching what was probably the biggest game of the day.
Well, it was a happy convergence of CBS, and I think we deserve some credit for taking what is originally is thought of as a regional sport. And our management had the idea of taking a regional sport and broadcasting it nationally. Now, the fact that it was the SEC kind of had something to do with that.
Sure.
When you've got Alabama and Georgia and Auburn and Tennessee and on and on and on. But I think we should get some credit for how we did the games. It's interesting. My boss was Sean McManus, and he was the son of the legendary greatest storyteller in the history of sportscasting, Jim McKay. Jim's real name was Jim McManus, and Jim and his wife Margaret were living in Baltimore, and he was offered a job to go to New York to host a game show, and it was called The Real McKay.
Oh.
And they said, "Would you change your name?" He was ambitious, so he became Jim McKay.
Hey, us game show hosts.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
stick
don't
together.
you?
So the SEC obviously lent itself to some great games, but let's go to the Kick Six play-by-play, because the way it came about, the sequence that led up to it was incredibly dramatic, but then the sudden turn of events that happened at the Iron Bowl. Let's go back and take a listen to this.
On the way. No, return by Chris Davis. Davis goes left. Davis gets a block. Davis has another block. Chris Davis. No flags. Touchdown. Auburn. An answered prayer.
An answered prayer, another one that you seem to just summon up. But again, we go back to how you televise a live sporting event. When that kick was taking place and there was a second put back on the clock, and there was all sorts of things that happened to make that suddenly, all of a sudden, explode into the sports universe. But when that play happened, Alabama was either going to win the game with a kick or they were going to overtime. Nobody was thinking Chris Davis is going to run this back 100-plus yards.
No, and the background was that the referee was Matt Austin, okay? And T.J. Yeldon had run the ball, and he stepped out of bounds with no time left or 1 second left. So I was working the game with Gary Danielson. And Craig Silver, our producer, who still does all of our college football, Craig said, "You guys keep talking. They're trying to marry the image of the main game camera and the end zone camera and synchronize them to determine exactly when Yeldon's foot came down." It took him 7 minutes.
Was there a second left, or are we off to overtime?
Yeah. That's right. And ultimately, and if you watch college football this weekend, you will hear a television rules analyst named Matt Austin.
Yeah.
And he's become a dear friend of mine, in part because of connection with this game. Matt is a guy who says, please put 1 second back on the clock. He works for the SEC and I think ABC now as really. Anyway, the background for the kick was that Saban was really irritated with the senior place kicker, a kid named Cade Foster. And Foster had 1 block and had missed 3 others. He was 1 for 4. And we all thought he'd do a Hail Mary, right?
Yeah.
57 yards, but he went for it and he put a redshirt freshman, immigrant from Poland, on the field to try the thing. And as we said, it was we only did 3 replays, right?
Right.
And so we let the crowd noise play. Again, Steve Milton.
And again, you also being willing to lay out and let
Shut
the
up.
story tell the story.
Just shut up.
Yeah, don't get in the way.
And Gary did too. And for 1 minute and 21 seconds, we let Steve Milton work his symphonic magic. I mean, he was brilliant. And then I said, well, you might want to see that again. and so we showed the replays. And on the clip that I've used in my presentations, it freezes right at the end. But Gary made the point that, this could go the other way. And so as the Chris Davis is heading in the end zone, Gary said, well, no wonder they couldn't tackle him. They had no one on the field but fat guys.
Yeah, that's the field
Yeah.
goal protect team.
Yeah,
just a bunch of
exactly.
lugs
Exactly.
out there and not good at
And I
tackling.
will tell you, Tom, I remember thinking to myself, I said, no flags.
That's what I was going to ask you.
And I thought, dear God, don't let there be any flags.
You said it confidently,
Yeah.
but you also identified Chris Davis quickly, which I would think you don't know who they're. He might have been. He was a good player and returned kicks and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So he was.
During the timeout, during the discussion of is there or is there not 1 second, the special teams coordinator, who was up in the box adjacent to us, he had somebody else back there, and instinctively he subbed and put Chris Davis back in.
Good,
Which caused
good
him,
choice.
Yeah, no kidding. And I think I've heard, that was 12 years ago, Chris Davis is coaching high school football somewhere in Alabama now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure he shares his tape every now and then with the kids.
Yeah.
There's one more clip I want to get to because of the years you did college basketball. And before, you didn't do this game we'll show with Bill Raftery, but I know, I've never met Bill Raftery, but I know more people who know Bill Raftery, and they consider him one of the great guys you'll ever meet. I mean, I'd love to go have a drink with him, but it sounds like you don't have one.
No, there's several. There's several. Bill has never met a last call which he observed, ever.
Last call is more of a warning.
Yeah,
a suggestion.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
But talk about Raftery for a second.
Well, Bill and I. He's probably, of all the analysts I've worked with in all the sports, Bill's my closest friend.
Uh-huh.
And the background goes back to 1983. I was in my second year at CBS, and Bill was one of the top 5 high school player recruits in the late 60s.
In the nation, yeah.
Yeah, and he wound up playing at LaSalle, and then he became a coach, and then went into basketball analysis. But in 1983, in February, we'd never met, and we were assigned back-to-back games at the University of South Carolina in Columbia. The first of which was a highly anticipated intersectional showdown between the powerful University of Idaho Vandals,
Oh, the Vandals.
and the South Carolina Gamecocks. I mean, America was breathless in anticipation.
What would happen? Do you remember even what happened?
And, and Billy and I immediately hit it off. We became good friends right away. And he said, look, we're back here next week for Marquette with this guy named Doc Rivers.
Yeah.
And he said, we got along so well, I bet if you bring Nancy, I'll bring Joni, and I bet the 4 of us become good friends. So we did. And that's what happened. Now, after the second game, Bill got a call from an executive named Kevin O'Malley. You guys sounded great together. I can't wait to hear you again. I get the same call. Kevin O'Malley. Boy, you and Bill are a great pair. Can't wait to hear you again together. 17 years. 17 years.
You didn't do anything together?
From
Because I
1980
think of you guys as such a pair, but there was that was the gulf between show 1 and show 2?
83 to 2000.
Oh, man.
Not once.
What was your reaction? Because we all love with the Kiss, and Onions, and Man to Man, and like, did he drop those on you at some point? And you just
For those of you who don't know, Bill is a master. I mean, he used, a jump shot in the corner. Get those puppies organized. And so, and my favorite of his is the term onions,
yeah,
which Bill uses as a euphemism for a certain part of the male
stones,
anatomy.
yeah.
And he will use it to describe a kid who'll dive for the loose ball, who got the guts to take the meaningful last-second shot. So we're doing a 8 versus 9 game, Siena versus Ohio State in Dayton, Ohio, and Siena had a guard named Ron Moore. So they're trailing by 3 at the clock winding down, and Ron Moore takes a three-pointer shot, and he hits it and ties the game, sends it to overtime. And Raftery says, "Onions!" So now they go to overtime, and Evan Turner from Ohio State banks one in, and that gives Ohio State a 2-point lead with about 7 seconds to go.
Right.
Here comes Siena, and again they get it to Ron Moore with 2 seconds left on the clock, and Ron Moore hits a 3, to which Raftery says, "Onions, double order."
Well, because you talk about last-second shots, I think that regional final in Philadelphia, we have the clip from the famous Christian Laettner shot when Duke beat Kentucky. Let's check it out.
There's the pass to Laettner. Puts it up. Yes!
That call is so interesting to me because you tell the story of the young man who threw the inbounds pass, and you had a very long-term relationship with him.
Yeah, I did. Grant Hill, who at that point was a 6'8" sophomore. His father was Calvin Hill, and his mom, Janet Hill. Janet passed away about a year ago, but Calvin was a first-round pick of the Cowboys in '69.
Great running back
out of Yale.
Yeah,
outstanding. And Calvin and Janet and I became really, really close friends. And I was working the 6 and 10 at the ABC affiliate in Dallas. So knowing that Janet was pregnant with a child, and they were aware it was going to be a boy, I told Calvin, I said, give me a call when Janet gives birth. I want to announce Grant's birth on the 10 o'clock news. And so he called me, and I announced Grant Henry Hill's birth October 5th, 1972 on the 10 o'clock news in Dallas. And we had a really good news team and a high rated.
Yeah.
So it spread all over the city.
Cowboys news too. So
oh, yeah,
people want to bring it.
And so when that game happened, in March 28th of '92 at the Spectrum in Philadelphia, here's this now 6'8" guy who ultimately had a 19-year career.
Great
in the NBA.
player,
Yeah,
Hall of Famer.
Great,
Yeah.
and a great human being. And so when he threw the pass during the celebrations going on, I thought back to the announcement of his birth 20 years prior, and I was able to tell that story in the pandemonium that surrounded the victory. That here's this kid, October 5, 1970. I'll never forget his birthday.
I can tell.
And I was able to relate that. And Janet and Calvin were sitting right behind the Duke bench.
Right.
And Mike Krzyzewski, of course, legendary Mike, was the coach. And so I told that story, and we had a reaction. The other reaction in the replay was Christian Laettner's mother, and she had a neck brace of some sort.
Oh.
And in the celebration, somebody bumped her, and she went. And but here's the thing about Christian Leitner: he should have been eliminated from the game, because midway through the second, I was working with Lenny Elmore,
Len Elmore
because Raft and I were not.
You were in the 17 year.
Yeah, in the 17 year. This is
Hold.
92, and Leitner put his size 14 in the midsection of a backup center named Aminu Timberlake.
He was on the ground.
Yes, and he should. And Lenny said, "I'm not sure he meant to do that." And I said, "Oh yes, he did." And so on the 20th anniversary of that game, they brought Lenny, me, and Christian into New York, and they played it on 3 or 4 monitors. And Christian Leitner, his own teammates couldn't stand him.
Yeah, he had that reputation.
Oh, he was an
Yeah.
arrogant guy. But when we got to that part about the body slam or the foot slam, he said, "I just knew you were going to show that." I said, "Well, why would we not?
Yeah.
You should have been out of the game." But I mean, he was perfect. And I did a radio show with a guy in Atlanta named Steak Shapiro, and he said, "Are you particularly proud of that gal?" I said, "Not really, because all I did was say yes." I channeled my inner Marv Albert, and yes.
But like those moments, again, you let the moment tell the story.
Yeah.
You know, you're watching on television. If you were on radio, you would have had to fill it with the descriptives.
Well, that's the key, isn't it, Tom?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, just let these guys who are professionals and the best in the business document it visually and orally, auditorily, and just lay out.
I want to talk about your career in major motion pictures.
Oh yes, oh that.
So, Happy Gilmore.
Yeah.
And it's so funny to me because I, as a longtime sportscaster, sports fan, always, you know, had a certain amount of reverence for the calls, for those moments that you were such a big part of for so many people. And I think of you as so famous for having stepped up and done all that. And then Happy Gilmore comes along, and you utter this line.
Who the hell is Happy Gilmore?
And you tell me that line transcended popularity for you. It is from a whole different group of people now know Verne as the guy who said, "Who the hell is Happy Gilmore?"
Yeah, yeah. And there's in my view, a wonderful backstory to that. We shot that on one day in Vancouver, British Columbia. And the producer of the original Happy Gilmore, the director rather, was a fellow named Dennis Dugan. And so we meet at 7 o'clock in the morning, and Dennis said, "I've got an idea. Let's do an inside gag." And so he pointed to Jack Jaraputo, who's the fellow to whom I said, "Who the hell is Happy Gilmore?" And Jack was Adam Sandler's suite mate at New York University's film school.
Buddy.
Yeah, a close friend.
Yeah.
And he said, "Jack, go to wardrobe. I want you to get a coat, tie, and sit next to Verne, but you cannot say a word because you're not a member of a Screen Actors Guild." So Jack just sat there and nodded, and so it's an inside gag, just meant for those of us who are part of the production. Now with Happy Gilmore 2, which was released back in November, Jack is the executive producer of all. He's Adam Sandler's best
With
friend.
Happy Madison
Yeah,
Productions.
uh-huh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So and then you also in the new one get to work with one of your favorite musicians of all time, Post Malone.
Yes, I'm the one who didn't know who he was. I had no. Who is this guy named Post Malone? And he's 29 years old, as I learned, and I learned quickly who he was.
Sure.
Former rap artist, now a country guy, has more tattoos than any human body should be able to absorb, including his daughter's birth date up here.
Right there.
Yeah, and turned out to be a really terrific guy. So I'm not. We're good buddies.
Happy Gilmore 2.
Me and Post and Jelly Roll.
So you came so you came back and did Happy Gilmore 2, and you were glad to do it. But it's funny, you tell the story of how you got the role in Happy Gilmore not one, but the first Happy Gilmore, that maybe they had looked for a different CBS sports voice.
Well, yes. My agent was Bob Rosen, who passed away about a year ago. Bob represented all of the CBS golf guys, and Frank Cherkinian told me I was at the time I went to CBS. I was represented by International IMG, International Management Group. Mark McCormick started that. It was Jack Nicklaus, Gary Player,
Huge.
and Arnold Palmer. Huge. And then I went to start doing CBS Golf, and Cherkinian said, "You need to go with Bob Rosen." So I did. He also had Pat Summerall. So I get a call, fly to Vancouver. They're going to shoot this movie called Happy Gilmore. And they sent me the script, and they had tried to ink out the name Summerall.
For your lines.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Pat had been offered the deal first and turned it down. That's beneath me. So I said, it's not beneath me.
I'll do it.
Yeah,
I'll be glad
I'll
to do it.
Yeah.
And the reaction to it, because people react to you. The SEC always, I mean, when you got to town to do the game, the people of the South would always be thrilled that Verne was coming to, Knoxville or wherever the game was that week. And obviously Augusta was a place where you were always welcome. But the Happy Gilmore crowd, you'd hear that line in airports. You'd hear that line in restaurants.
Who the hell is Happy Gilmore? Yeah, it became part of my identity almost. and it's that and a fellow named, what was his name? Spencer Hall. And he ran a website called Every Day Should Be Saturday.
Okay.
And he's the one who came up with the term Uncle Verne.
Uncle Verne
and
for SEC football.
And I must tell you, I love that because it seems to me to be a term of affection.
Well,
so if I get called Uncle Verne, I'm happy with that.
I've always loved our chances to chat, but I'm going to lose you soon because you're going on a little boat trip.
Yeah.
You're going to go see.
Tiny.
You're going to see the planet.
Yeah, Nancy and I. It's been a lifelong bucket list.
Yeah.
Dream of ours, and so we are booked on an Oceanic cruise line ship called Vista, and on January 6th we embark in Miami, and we are going around the world.
The whole thing.
Yeah, around the world, 43 countries on 6 continents, and we don't have much left in our savings account.
Well, I'm also wondering how you pack.
You know what we do? Pack in 10-day increments.
Okay.
Because there's dry cleaning and laundry on board the ship.
Right.
And they're very, very efficient. And Nancy and I were actually on this ship, and I had a 19-year speaking relationship aboard Oceana.
You do SEC tours.
Do film, a lot of Jack stuff, a lot of Tiger stuff, a lot of Raftery stuff, and I did that for all these years, and it was always a quid pro quo, and I could request an itinerary, but they would only give it to me if there was space available.
Right.
And but we got most of what we asked for, and so we were able to see the world. And my loyalty is to Oceanic Cruise Lines, and so we booked this Vista.
Amazing.
And we're heading around the world, quite literally. Yeah.
I know there were times through COVID and the like where you were concerned you might not be able to go via health or via COVID to Augusta. And I remember I found it like it was not heartbreaking, but it made you sad, the idea that you didn't, but you ended up going. You ended up doing it. Do you miss it now? Do you miss the broadcast, because you talk so much about everyone else on the team, and I always thought the teamwork of a broadcast was some of the beauty of it that people don't see. They see the pictures and they hear you, but I imagine you reflect on it with pride, but you also probably miss some of that excitement.
Oh gosh, yes. I mean, it was so much a part of my life for so many years. I did the first one in '83. The last one in 2024, and I missed 2 years,
Yeah.
97 and 98. we had lost the NFL to Fox in '94, and I chose to stay at CBS for 1 year in '95 at a greatly reduced income. But then my agent, the aforementioned Bob Rosen, said Turner Broadcasting has offered you a lot of money to do Sunday Night Football with Pat Hayden, and a variety of other things. So I missed the Tigers' first win,
Yep.
and Mark O'Meara's the following year. And then when we got the rights to the NFL back, I was doing figure skating Winter Olympics in Nagano, Japan. And Sean McManus, my boss, and Tony Petitti, his number 2 guy, who's now commissioner of the Big Ten, approached me. They were doing what they call an ice make in Nagano. And I was up there with Scott, and Sean came in and he said, "Are you ready to come home?" And after I got off my knees,
Yes.
I said, "Oh yeah, I think so."
Well, we have to talk about skating because I get the feeling that you did 3 Olympiads, I think, most primarily skating with Tracy and Scott Hamilton, who is one of the best guys I've ever known. He was here in Denver for so long.
Yep.
Did you know anything about skating when you jumped in?
Not squat.
You couldn't tell a Lutz from a Sol cow, or
No, I couldn't tell an axle from a toe flip. I mean, I had no idea. And we did a practice show at the Broadmoor,
Right.
in Colorado Springs. But our first ever major event was the European Championships in Leningrad.
Okay.
And so we were there, and I'd worked with Bradshaw, and I did some boxing with Sugar Ray Leonard back in the early '80s, and I thought I'd seen Celebrity, but when Scott walked into the Yubileyny Arena in Leningrad, Russia, 10,000 people in there, it took him 25 minutes.
He was Elvis,
He was
not Stoico.
and he's such no, not Stoico, but he's such a gracious human being.
Mm-hmm.
He took the time to autograph and pose for pictures. He's so gracious, and he's a dear friend.
You talk about the right place at the right time. Skating, it always is big in the Olympics, but you did Tanya Nancy. You were there for that debacle.
Debacle is the right word, a clown show or cartoon. I remember we were observers at the U.S. Nationals in Detroit.
When the Galooly happened.
Yeah. And when Shane Stant put the crowbar across Kerrigan's left thigh, and why me?
Yeah.
And that night I flew into a snowstorm and I've been in the air all day, flight delays, and I turned on WJR, and the news guy said, "And here's the latest on the attack on Nancy Kerrigan." What? And so the United States Figure Skating Association had a buffet dinner that night at the top of the Westin Hotel, and I was up there, and one of the executives pulled me aside. He said, "When we get to the bottom of this, and we will, Tanya Harding is going to be involved." And from that point on, I mean, there were lawsuits filed. She was kicked off the team. She appealed. She was put back on, and it really did become a cartoon.
Oh man!
And
well, even a movie.
I, Tanya.
Yeah.
Which I thought was overly sympathetic to Tanya Harding.
Yeah.
I mean, she had a tough childhood. No, her mom was married 6 times.
But still, you probably shouldn't attack.
No, I don't think so.
Your fellow competitor.
And it was her ex-husband, Jeff Galooly, who arranged the whole thing. But the build-up, Tom, from that 6 weeks until the Wednesday night of the 2 of them competing against each other on the ice.
Even just warming up.
They're
both on the ice at the same time, and everyone was watching. These are events that are watched by the whole world. I mean, everyone.
Not that CBS contributed to the cartoon-like aspect, but Connie Chung was co-anchoring the evening news with Dan Rather. Connie Chung flew to Portland with a camera crew, accompanied Tanya Harding from Portland to Chicago to Amsterdam to Oslo and all the way to Hamar,
Right.
Lillehammer. And then the night of the first practice, when the two of them are on the ice, I can almost tell you the names. John Blackstone, Susan Spencer, Martha Teichner, Mark Phillips, Bill Geist.
It's all of
Each-
CBS News.
Each with a camera crew.
Yeah.
Right? And below us, Connie Chung co-anchoring the evening news with Dan Rather back in New York. And Scott was incensed.
Well,
Yeah.
it's like everything, and it is now more than it even was then, but everything's the biggest thing ever until the next thing comes along. And
Estimated on Thursday, we went to practice, and our then president of CBS Sports, Neil Pilson, said, "Yeah, you guys hear about the ratings?" No. Well, 48.5, which means 48.5% of every television set in America was watching, and the estimated audience was 126 million. It's been downgraded now, but it's still, to my knowledge, the highest rated non-Super Bowl sporting event ever televised.
And that goes back to the amazing Verne Lundquist. He ends up in the chair at the place where America or people just want to be. This is funny. I do this podcast. I'm just learning how to do it. And it's a lot of time. It's not like the usual television interviews I do where you have 2.5 or 3 minutes.
Right.
And the show I did with Ron last week and the one I do today, I could go on, but I can't. I love you. I thank you so much for taking the time. You've always been so generous to me, so kind, and I love your work. I love your family, and I can't thank you enough for coming down here and sharing some of your stories with us.
You are a dear friend. You know that.
Thank you.
A dear friend, Tom.
Thank you very much. We talk about timing and how things work out in your life a lot on this show, or at least I hope to. What happened with Verne and how he ended up where he did and stuff. But I think of myself and Verne and an incident that happened in the early 80s. Let's say it was about 40 years ago. I was young and, as always, kind of in over my head at whatever job I had at the time. I was working at Channel 9 as a sportscaster, but I was very young and I was trying to find my way. And I was at the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame banquet one night, and I was making my way through some tables when I was called out, and it was Verne. And he was sitting there with his wife and Doak Walker and Doak's wife Skeeter. And obviously, I was really surprised that Verne Lundquist would know my name. Well, Verne took the time to pull me over, tell me he's watching from up in Steamboat Springs, and he sees what I'm doing, and he thinks I'm doing a good job, and to keep up the good work. And some encouragement at that point in my life and in anyone's life can really mean a lot if it comes from the right person. And that night, I was in the right place at the right time to be coached along and pulled along and pushed a bit by the great Verne Lundquist. And I'd want to thank him again for being part of our show today. Hope you enjoyed episode 2 of The Other Tom Green Show. We hope to see you back here again next week.